I didn't scream when I found my dad face down in the garden. I just picked up the HOA violation notice crumpled in his fist and realized he hadn't died from weeds in the yard. He died from betrayal. You see, my stepmom and the Willow Ridge HOA didn't just ruin his life with fines, they ended it. And when I pieced together how deep the conspiracy went, I dragged every last one of them into court. My name is Jordan Reed. I'm 35 years old, black, and the only child of Thomas Reed. My dad was a retired history teacher and the kind of man who believed in two things: taking care of your family and holding on to your land. He spent his whole life protecting our 5-acre property outside Dallas, land his father bought in 1962 when black folks weren't welcome in half the neighborhoods in Texas. After my mom died in 2018, Dad remarried quickly, too quickly. Her name was Linda, my stepmom. She smiled sweetly, called me baby, and wore pearls to the grocery store. But behind that sugary voice was ambition sharp enough to cut glass. What I didn't know then, what would take me years and my father's death to uncover, was that Linda wasn't just playing wife. She was playing partner to the HOA president, Douglas Whitaker, a man who wore golf polos like armor and treated every board meeting like a coronation. Douglas wasn't just running an HOA, he was building a real estate empire, one foreclosure at a time. The plan was simple. Linda married my dad for the property. The HOA buried him in violations, and when the stress finished the job, she'd sell the land to Whitaker's development company, and it almost worked. For months, the HOA mailed my dad fines for everything under the sun: grass too high, a shed not to code, even though it had stood since the 70s. Linda would shake her head, sigh, and whisper in his ear, "Tom, maybe it's time to sell." But my dad was stubborn. He told me on the phone one night, "Son, I'll die on this land before I let them take it." 2 weeks later, he did. The coroner called it cardiac arrest, but something didn't sit right. My dad had a clean bill of health. What he didn't have were his heart meds. The pill bottle in his cabinet was empty, emptied 2 weeks too soon. That's when I started digging. Here's your first knowledge nugget. When someone dies under suspicious circumstances, their phone records are gold. Dad's last texts weren't to me, they were to Linda. And she never answered, but she was busy, because at the same time, she was trading late-night messages with Douglas Whitaker. Texts the police later called intimate. Texts about clearing the property and insurance finally kicking in. Insurance. That was the other piece. Dad's $500,000 policy didn't list me. It listed Linda. She cashed it less than 48 hours after the funeral. My grief hardened into steel, and that's when I did what my dad raised me to do. I fought back. First, I pulled property records. Turns out Douglas's shell company had already filed preliminary development plans on our land before Dad even died. Second, I subpoenaed meeting minutes from the HOA board. Buried in the notes was a motion to acquire the Reed property for community benefit, filed 1 week before my father's death. And third, I found the nail in the coffin. Emails between Linda and Douglas discussing accelerating the transition, polite code words for murder. Here's your second knowledge nugget. HOA boards may think they're above the law, but paper trails don't lie. And Linda and Douglas had left me miles of it. So I hired a lawyer named Amanda Cross, the kind who eats HOA presidents for breakfast. Together, we filed a civil suit that made headlines before the ink was dry. Wrongful death, fraud, civil conspiracy, racketeering. When the sheriff's deputy served Linda and Douglas, they looked like country club royalty caught shoplifting at Walmart. Linda called me that night, her voice shaking for the first time since I'd known her. "Jordan, you don't understand. I loved your father." I hung up before she could finish. Court day came, and I'll never forget the sight. Linda in her black dress and pearls playing the grieving widow. Douglas in his pressed suit, pretending to be a respectable community leader. And me in the same boots I'd worn the day we buried Dad, holding the deed to our land in my hand like a weapon. Their lawyer tried to paint my father as unstable, stressed, and ready to die. But then Amanda dropped the bomb. Text messages between Linda and Douglas, emails about transition plans, and pharmacy records showing Linda picked up my father's medication but never refilled it. The courtroom gasped. The judge leaned forward, and for the first time, Linda's mask cracked. Then came the kicker. The HOA treasurer, a nervous man with shaky hands, took the stand and admitted he'd overheard Linda and Douglas laughing about how the old man wouldn't last another season. He broke down crying right there on the witness stand. Here's your third knowledge nugget. In civil conspiracy cases, one insider confession can burn the whole house down, and that's exactly what it did. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Damages awarded $12 million and a referral to the district attorney for criminal charges. When the bailiff led Linda away, she turned and hissed, "You'll regret this, boy." But I didn't, because outside the courthouse, neighbors who'd once stayed silent lined up to shake my hand. They'd all been victims of Willow Ridge's harassment too, and my fight gave them courage to start their own. As for me, I didn't want the money, I wanted justice. So I used part of the settlement to set up the Thomas Reed Foundation, legal aid for families fighting corrupt HOAs. Because this was never just about my dad's death, it was about the principle he lived by. They can't take your mind or your land if you know how to fight for both. And thanks to the truth finally finally coming out in court. My stepmom and her lover won't be seeing daylight or HOA meetings ever again. If you want more revenge stories like this, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Hit like and subscribe.